slide, we have what we did in equities, and these numbers are tiny when you get right down to it. I mean, for having 500 billion or so in net worth, and I mean not in net worth, but in market value at the start of the year or something close to that. We bought in 1.7 billion of stock, and our purchases were a couple of billion more than our sales of equities. But as you saw in the previous slide, we had operating earnings of almost 6 billion, and so we did very little in the first quarter. And then I've added another figure which I wouldn't normally present to you, but I want to be sure that if I'm talking to you about investments in stocks more than I usually have, I want you to know what Berkshire's actually doing. Now, you'll see in the month of April that we net sold 6 billion or so of securities, and that isn't because we thought the stock market was going to go down or anything of the sort, or because somebody changes their target price or they change this year's earnings forecast. I just decided that I'd made a mistake in evaluating. It was an understandable mistake. It was a probability-weighted decision when we bought that we were getting an attractive amount for our money when investing across the airlines business. So we bought roughly 10% of the 4 largest airlines, and we probably, this is not 100% of what we did in April, but we probably paid 7 or 8 billion, somewhere between 7 and 8 billion, to own 10% of the 4 large companies in the airline business, and we felt for that we were getting $1 billion roughly of earnings. Now, we weren't getting $1 billion of dividends, but we felt our share of the underlying earnings was $1 billion, and we felt that number was more likely to go up than down over a period of time. It would be cyclical, obviously, but it was as if we bought the whole company, but we bought it through the New York Stock Exchange, and we could only effectively buy 10% roughly of the 4. We treat it mentally exactly as if we were buying a business, and it turned out I was wrong about that business because of something that was not in any way the fault of 4 excellent CEOs. I mean, believe me, no joy being a CEO of an airline, but the companies we bought were well managed. They did a lot of things right. It's a very, very, very difficult business because you're dealing with millions of people every day, and if something goes wrong for 1% of them, they are very unhappy. So I don't envy anybody the job of being CEO of an airline, but I particularly don't enjoy them being in a period like this where essentially nobody, and people have been told basically not to fly. I've been told not to fly for a while. I'm looking forward to flying. I may not fly commercial, but that's another question. But the airline business, and I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think it changed in a very major way, and it's obviously changed in the fact that the 4 companies are each going to borrow, perhaps an average of at least 10 or 12 billion each. Well, you have to pay that back out of earnings over some period of time. I mean, you're 10 or 12 billion dollars worse off if that happens. And of course, in some cases, they're having to sell stock or sell the right to buy a stock at these prices, and that takes away from the upside down. And I don't know whether 2 or 3 years from now that as many people will fly as many passenger miles as they did last year. They may and they may not. But the future is much less clear to me about how the business will turn out through absolutely no fault of the airlines themselves. But something that was a low probability event happened, and it happened to hurt particularly, whether it's the travel business, the hotel business, the cruise business, the theme park business, But the airline business in particular, and of course the airline business has the problem that if the business comes back 70% or 80%, the aircraft don't disappear. So you've got too many planes, and it didn't look that way when the orders were placed a few months ago, or when arrangements were made. But the world changed for airlines, and I wish them well. But it's one of the businesses we have. We have businesses we own directly that are going to be hurt significantly. The virus will cost Berkshire money. It doesn't cost money because our stock and various other businesses moves around. I mean, if XYZ, which is say is one of our holdings, and we own it as a business and we like the business, the stock goes down 20 or 30 or 40%. We don't feel we're poor in that situation. We felt we were poor in terms of what actually happened to those airline businesses, just as if we'd owned 100% of them. So that explains those sales, which are relatively minor, but I want to make sure that nobody thinks that involves a market prediction. And that pretty well wraps it up for Berkshire.